The Waters Morning Scramble is 8:33, and Kyle Wray, Vice President of Oklahoma State University. 2020 has been a year like no other. This is what you prepared for.
I don't know about that.
This is what you went to school for. Wow. No, when you take a big job, or they say if you're going to run for governor, if you're going to run for president of university, vice president of university, there's going to be things come up that you never dreamed of.
Oh, that's right.
Welcome to 2020, right?
Yeah, no kidding. It's been an interesting year to say the least, and they don't have any books for this. I do have a book on my shelf that's pretty interesting, and it's called Now is Too Late, and it's talking about planning for emergencies and things that, there are some things you can do, especially from a public relations, media relations perspective, but when it has to do with the health of your city, your institution, the state, the nation, this is new ground.
That's a great title, actually, because we all have to make decisions. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But when you and I both like documentaries and history and books like that and stuff, and they go back and look at what should have been done, or what might have been done to prevent or take it a different direction, or what might have been done that was absolutely spot on. And you always hope you're doing spot on, but you do have to prepare. So.
The premise for this book is a town that has a natural gas explosion in the downtown area, and they weren't prepared in any way. And that sort of lays the groundwork for what should have been done, what could have been done, etc. And it's a very interesting read.
Yeah. I'm going to go way off. This is just a kind of an interesting, the explosion you mentioned, explosion they had a month ago today in Beirut. They think they might have a guy that's alive. Isn't that awesome?
Wow.
And they're searching for him right now, but dogs found what they believe to be possibly life. And so what was neat was watching the rescuers literally hug one another, because they've been out there digging, and they're still working on that stuff. And just the thought of there might be a life under there. This might be worth something. I thought it was just very inspiring.
Yeah, I'd almost forgotten about that. Just massive. There was a before and after picture of that whole area. Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, they're searching this morning, and there might be news in that there might be a life still under there. And how did they live? Whether, who knows? But anyway, just watching the responders react, and you can tell, okay, this gives us purpose.
Absolutely. Wow, a whole month.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
That's crazy.
So anyway, you mentioned explosion, so I got off track here. Hey, let's talk about the explosion of news we had. We had the governor in a couple days ago, and you had a chance to have a little a one-on-one almost. Tell us how that went.
It was good. President Hargis and I and a few other folks were in sort of a briefing before the press conference, and obviously the situation across the state was the main topic at hand, and I thought the governor said some really good things in that briefing. President Hargis got an opportunity to talk about what's happening on our campus and some of the things that we were doing, and so Joy Hoffmeister was there and talked about the state of Oklahoma and the educational challenges that they're having, but they are implementing, as our superintendent here, Moore, said that there were things that they were doing, had been planning for, etc. And so there was some good exchange between a lot of folks in the room. There were only 15 of us or so, I think, and but there were some good thoughts. I thought the governor had some good answers to some of the questions that was thrown out. The governor had questions. There was just a good exchange.
So what did
overall.
what would the governor ask you, for example? Because when we're seeing a lot of the news coverage, and this is just me, but from watching it, the news coverage from the newspapers and TV have been very positive on how Oklahoma State has almost been proactive and leading in some of these ways. Is that right?
It is right, and we had a discussion, and he mentioned a couple of things that, yes, he knew that there were cases, positive cases, but he was very happy to hear that our quarantine facilities were not full, nowhere close to full, and that from an OSU perspective, hospitalizations, there were none. And so, we got some more information this week from the White House that talked about how important it was if you have college students for them when they do test positive to try to stay on campus, to stay in quarantine, that to send them home to multi-generational families was a danger to those families and to those towns. And so,
Yeah, I saw Dr. Burke saying that 2 or 3 times. I thought that was really important news because I think people just want their daughter or son home safely, and it's like that's not where safely is necessarily.
Right.
If that's a sentence.
Because you may be thinking about the safety of your child, while this virus sort of tells us that 18 to 22 is not an age group that need to be horribly concerned. I'm not saying that people that age don't have problems, but that your own safety and the safety of I'm talking about moms and dads, your own parents or aunts and uncles who could be close to that family living under the same roof, that you could be inviting some real problems for yourself.
Yeah, I thought that was just an important message, and I hope it resonated, because then you take it to the small town, and they go and see mom and dad. Mom and dad then go to church, and go to work, and go see their mom and dad.
Right.
So now you got grandma and grandpa, and so just hunker down, which is kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, which is promoting sports, and the fact that with the argument about the safest places that the players can possibly be sometime is that in that environment, as opposed to turning them out loose, right?
Right, absolutely. We talked about the fact that when students test positive and they are quarantined, they don't have to skip a beat when it comes to their education, because we've provided for those classes to be offered online. And our classrooms are fitted with video opportunities so that those students don't have to miss anything relative to, let's say, a 10-day or 2-week hiatus from those particular classes. So the governor was very happy about the plan that we had in place, and as President Hargis has said several times, we have a plan. We've worked on it since March. We've implemented it, and it is working. We can't control the social interactions of 18 to 22-year-olds all the time. We knew that there were going to be cases. That is happening, but from a quarantine perspective and hospitalization perspective, we feel like we're in a good place.
I saw, I don't know if I should go here or not. I saw, this has to do with the recommendation, I think it was a Canadian doctor, but it was advice to college-age amorous social activities.
Right.
It was recommending a mask. And I thought, okay, it's one thing asking them to, when you go to a restaurant, when you go to the ball game, when you go to Walmart. I think you're pushing your luck. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make light of it, but she's saying it's best if you're going to get romantic. She's talking to these college students, wear your mask. And I just don't see that happening.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. I haven't seen that or heard it, but it makes a whole lot of sense. So, but I will say, we had, when the governor came on campus and the group that always comes with the governor, and there was an entourage this time because there were multiple health officials, a new chief of staff for the governor's office. His name is Bond Payne, and interesting, Bond, and it's Payne, which is a name that we're very familiar with. Bond, back a long time ago, was the driver for a guy who wanted to be governor of the state of Oklahoma, and that man's name was Burns Hargis.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow,
it's interesting how all those things come together.
Bond, Payne Bond.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it was interesting because each one of those people came up to me and said, "We're really impressed. We were over on campus in between classes, and the students were wearing masks in the buildings, outside of the buildings, and so they were happy to see that."
I've seen some clips and know a little bit of how news footage works. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but the Today Show was here, a week or two ago?
Yes.
Were you on that?
I was not on camera, but I was on the other side of the camera, and we were talking to the producers, and we worked with them for a week and a half or so.
But they obviously shot lots of exterior footage and stuff, and so that stuff never goes away, by the way. And so when you see clips of when they're talking the college atmosphere, and then you see the OSU logo walking into a building, I'm guessing that was shot during that time.
It was.
Yeah.
They were here. total, I think, about a week almost, and shot a lot of video, and shot some with President Hargis, shot some with different people that are involved in operational Christy Hawkins
Yeah.
in terms of
Were you
contact
pleased with
tracing
what
and
you
that kind of
saw?
thing. Absolutely, absolutely. Originally they came here to do a story on contact tracing, but between the time they actually got boots on the ground here and the show, we had some sororities that showed some spikes and those kind of things, and so the story did morph a little bit,
Right.
and so it's a challenge. I think back to that book I just said a minute ago. Now it's too late. Um, when you're happy to invite the press in when something good is happening, what are you when they start sniffing around when something challenging is happening to you?
At that time, at that very minute, yeah.
Sure, but at any time. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of this. You want it to be a one-way street. Oh, great things are happening. You're going to say something good about us? Come on.
Right.
And then when something challenging is happening and you don't want them to say, oh, no, we don't want to engage you. Well, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a relationship, and when something bad is happening, you've got to talk about what's occurring and who can talk and what the facts are and those kinds of things. So that is called media relations. And so in our area, we've got people, Monica Roberts and others, who are doing that all the time. I mean, the worst time to get to know a reporter is when something
Right.
challenging is occurring with your organization. And so going out and getting to know them so that they'll call you first and say, okay, what is really going on here? Obviously, we have to cover this, but can you give us what some of the facts are? And that relationship allows you some time, and it allows you the ability to speak into that process.
You know, you have an insight to that avenue that most people don't.
Right.
But when you hear that on even the national stage, when you see, and I know people, you can choose what media you go for, and we've learned that everybody wants to blame the messenger. But some of these veteran journalists have relationships that are in these buildings that they've had for 35 years.
Sure.
And they have genuine relationships, and there's a trust there.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to go back both ways. Even like very simply, the stuff that Rob Hill is sending me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get stuff and it says, please do not disseminate this information. Well, if you start, then you're going to be out of that loop.
Sure.
If you burn that bridge,
Mm-hmm.
then you're cut off.
Right.
And so the ones that have those long-term relationships, I trust.
Mm-hmm.
When the people want to know, okay, who do you listen to? The ones that have been there forever and have those long-term things, they've earned that. And they've proven trustworthy, I think.
Right.
And it does have to go both ways. You can tell me something, and that's happened a couple of times.
It's happened several times where there have been things where, hey, we need to get this out. We can't get it out at this very moment, but I'm going to give you this information so that you don't have to hear it somewhere else. And there's a timeline,
right,
and that kind of thing. So absolutely, and we've seen that play out right here.
And it just has to work like that. So
Yeah.
Interesting because I didn't really know that happened in something like this with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that relationship with, say, Today Show producers or whatever it is, that's established now, right?
Right. And there's a lot of work that goes. The Today Show doesn't just show up here. I mean,
right.
There are conversations behind the scenes about what it is they're coming for. It was contact tracing originally, and so talking with their producer back in New York City, and what that show was going to be about. And then a day or two before they showed up, it was, oh, well, we hear that there have been some cases in a sorority there. Yes, you can't deny that.
Right.
That's out there. And so let's talk about what that looks like. There were some other things. For instance, they heard about our Pete Pet Posse program. Well, they were interested in that.
Sure.
And that was a key part of that story.
Right.
And it was great. And so that was not on the radar screen.
Right. Well, you're also, if you watch network news at all, usually the last 5 minutes on each of the news networks is a feel-good story.
Right.
They want stories like that.
Absolutely.
Also.
Yeah.
You know Kerry Sanders? He's a reporter for NBC. He's usually at a hurricane somewhere, and he's standing there in waders and stuff. But and I think he does a really good job. And he's just kind of a little guy here, and he's probably my age, would be my guess. But he's almost developed a relationship with Stillwater. He was here during the homecoming tragedy,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and I can remember driving into work and going through that intersection, and he was on the corner getting ready to go on with the Today Show. And so he was here for 2 days, and I think there were storms somewhere else, and then 2 days later, you see him in Florida.
Right.
Well, when we had floods, was it last year? These years are running together. Was it last year we had the flooding here and all that stuff?
Or the year before, yeah.
Well, who came back? Kerry Sanders.
There you go.
And Rob Hill has almost developed a relationship because we now handle Kerry Sanders' cold remedies because we've learned that if you take lifesavers instead of cough drops, they work better.
I remember hearing that.
Right.
I remember us talking about that.
So when he was here last time, he had a cold. He was there coughing, and Rob Hill said, "Here, try this," and he gives him a lifesaver. And before you know it, Kerry is sending people down to Walgreens to get him lifesavers.
I heard. That's good.
And so it's kind of, but there is a relationship, and so I'm guessing when something happens here, they know their staff. He'll probably be back because there's a familiarity.
Sure.
Right, and you have a relationship.
Yep. And when someone mentions Stillwater, he says, "Hey, I'll take that gig." Yeah.
And so those relationships are key. They really are.